Yep. There's big money in trucking if you do it the way I've done it. I probably backed up more miles than most guys have gone forward. The secret? Own your own truck. Be your own boss. Why, with one truck I grossed $1.5 million last year. Put on more miles, had to spend so much money so they wouldn't take it all in taxes. Got a yacht in the harbor. Got a ski lodge in Aspen. Yeah. Got Elon Musk on speed dial. Driving Test is America's #1 online developer for driver testing online. And they've developed a course to help you pass your ELDT certificate and get your CDL knowledge exam. Guaranteed. Check them out at drivingtest.org. Now, I can't tell you over the years the number of guys like that, super truckers that I've met in this industry that have some sort of an inflated ego problem. And it's guys like this a lot of the time, and they're prevalent throughout the industry, but it's guys like this a lot of the time that will buy their own truck because they have this inner need, this ego problem that they need to satisfy, and they've got to own their own truck. And a lot of them will sign on the dotted line whether it makes financial sense or not. And the carriers a number of years ago were quick to latch on to this fact that there were a percentage of truck drivers out there that had this ego need to own their own equipment. And that's when they got onto the idea of leasing trucks and holding the financing for guys. And they knew that a percentage of guys would sign on the dotted line whether they could truly afford it or not. And today, lease operators dominate the industry, and there are more lease operators out there than owner operators, company drivers, and true independents all combined. And it's all driven about ego. And these lease operators with these ego problems will look you square in the eye, and they will tell you that they own the truck when really they don't own the truck, the carrier owns the truck. And they'll look you square in the eye and tell you that they're making big money when they're not, when they're half the time they're on the verge of bankruptcy. But what a lot of these guys get into, and they don't realize at the time, is just because they're a good driver does not mean they're going to be a good businessman. And owning a truck is like owning a small business. And it's not about how well you drive, it's whether or not you can manage a small business successfully. Carriers came up with all sorts of fancy terms to entice drivers into buying or leasing equipment, terms like independent contractor. So these guys felt like a big wheel, and they would buy and lease these trucks, and the carriers loved it because it saved the carrier from buying the truck. He was getting the drivers to buy the truck. Saved carriers hundreds of millions of dollars across the country. But remember, successful trucking is about 4 things. And guys that own or lease their own equipment need to understand these 4 things. Number 1, it's not about the gross. It's all about the net figure, the money you take home and put in the bank. That's number 1. Number 2 is, it's not about driving your life away. It's not about working 7 days a week just to pay for the truck and cover your expenses. Number 3, it's about getting paid for all the work that you do. And number 4, and most importantly, it's all about the quality of life. Because there is no quality of life if your whole life revolves around driving the truck and trucking. You've got to have time for yourself and your family. And that's what successful trucking is truly all about. And all sorts of company drivers manage to have a successful trucking career without having to buy or lease a truck. So forget about your ego when you're thinking about buying a truck. Leave your ego at the door. Look at the finances, look at the numbers, look at the contract, make sure it's going to make sense, and make sure it's doable for you. Because all sorts of guys will not do the math and read the paperwork, and they'll sign anything just to get their own truck and be able to say they own their own truck. And it's just not worth it. So a number of years ago, there was a comedian whose name was Ray Carlisle, and he was smart enough to recognize that a certain percentage of truck drivers had this ego problem, and he decided to play on it. Now, Jeff Foxworthy was a famous comedian who did a routine called You Might Be a Redneck If. So this Ray Carlisle does a routine similar to that, a takeoff, and it says 101 reasons you might be a chicken hauler if. And he did a whole series of these things, and I got the tape. I've still got the tape. I still enjoy listening to it. But a couple of my favorite clips were, he said, you might be a chicken hauler if you spent your whole paycheck that week on mud flaps. Because back then the big thing was the chrome mud flap weights and the chrome hangers. Or you might be a chicken hauler if you spent a month's pay on your CB radio and didn't have enough money for Christmas presents for your kids. Stuff like that. It was an ego problem back then. It's still an ego problem these days. So remember, stay safe, keep the rubber side down, don't let your ego dictate your trucking career, and I'll see you on the back home.